I'm Marcus Mabry, live on the opening night of the Republican National Convention here in Tampa. Media from around the world are here, Republican delegates from around the country, and yet no one is convening. The convention hall behind me is mostly empty, but I'm joined nonetheless by a national political correspondent, Jeff Zelny, to talk over the impact on the Romney campaign of a delayed convention. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, Marcus, by this point in the campaign, we were supposed to be sort of well into a parade of Republican speakers, including some of the newer faces of the Republican Party, all beginning a message of fire Obama, hire Romney. That is really what the theme of this convention boils down to, but that is going to be on hold until tomorrow. So the practical concern of this is for the Romney campaign is that they have to shorten this, and it means fewer people will see their message at this convention.
Now, you've been talking to Romney's advisors all throughout this convention and way before, too. What are you hearing from them? How do they do that? How do they get the focus when the whole world's talking about Isaac? How do they get the focus back to Mitt?
Well, they basically are in some respects have to wait out the storm, and they have thrown some speakers overboard. And Ann Romney is going now to speak
save the ship
tomorrow night. Save the ship, to use one more analogy. And they are still keeping all the key elements of the speakers who are going to humanize Mitt Romney. That is the key element of this. But the Romney advisors tell me that they are still watching the weather very carefully. They're spending more time on weather calls than political calls, and they're trying to keep the delegates from growing sort of a restless in their hotels and other things. A bit of a vacuum has been created here in Tampa at the convention because the Romney campaign is not controlling this message.
And into that vacuum steps a lot of people, a lot of opponents who actually ran against Romney in the primaries, including Newt Gingrich.
It's true. I mean, some of the primary opponents from this Republican primary have been stepping into the spotlight today. I actually caught up with Speaker Gingrich just a few moments ago in the convention hall. Let's take a look at that clip. So do you think the divisions in the party that were out there in the primary with Herman Cain and Michelle Bachmann and Ron Paul, are those sort of resurfacing at least for one day since the convention was canceled today? Has it created something of a vacuum?
I have no idea. I mean, nothing is going to happen that is anything more than noise. The fact is Mitt Romney is going to be the nominee. Paul Ryan is going to be the vice presidential nominee. We're going to leave here united and with enormous energy and enthusiasm. And the eagerness to defeat Barack Obama and to win control of the Senate is palpable everywhere I go.
You think Republicans are still sort of spooked a little bit by the Hurricane Katrina and the ghost of Katrina in terms of what happened in 2005?
I went to Tulane for 3 years. My younger daughter was born in New Orleans. Katrina was a tragedy, and everybody should be a little spooked by that. I mean, I think anytime you have a hurricane come up the Gulf Coast, you have to have a sense of being worried. And so we should all, I think, have some concern.
So how they've handled this has been appropriate in your view?
I think so.
Great.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Jeff, as always, Professor Gingrich always very perceptive. At the end of the week, he says, Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan will be the nominees. Well, who knew? He's educating us all.
And that's an example, though, of Speaker Gingrich being a good sport. It's why he is going to be on the stage on Thursday night. Both he and his wife, Callista, will be introducing a movie for Ronald Reagan. So he has played along really well after a very divisive primary battle, particularly in this state of Florida, where Mitt Romney defeated him back so many months ago in January. So he has done, he's become a leading surrogate in some respects for the Romney campaign.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff. As this Republican Party tries to come together in unity around Mitt Romney after a very divisive campaign, and then they're hearkening back to the Gipper. He of the most social of presidents before social media ever existed.
We'll see more Reagan references at this convention than Romney references, or just as many.
Interesting. Now, turning back to things social, we're going to talk now to Jim Roberts down in the media center, who's with Ben Smith, the editor-in-chief of BuzzFeed, our convention partner, to talk a bit about what's happening out there in the social media world.
Thanks, Marcus. Yeah, I'm here with Ben Smith, BuzzFeed. What a weird day, right? Surreal, strange. 16,000 journalists chasing a story that hasn't happened yet.
Spending enormous amounts of money in this vast media center.
It's crazy. We are in a vast, I don't know what this normally is used for. It feels like an airplane hangar, or maybe like you could put a space shuttle in here. It's just huge. It really is strange. There seems to be certainly a news vacuum. There hasn't been a social media vacuum, obviously. We'll get to that. But it just makes you wonder, what is everybody doing here?
Well, what I've found is that everyone is sitting around reading each other's tweets and freaking out about them, more or less.
I know I've spent a certain amount of time doing that today.
I wrote a very offhand tweet about sort of second guessing the Republicans' decision to cancel today's convention, which was probably dumb backseat driving, and just immediately had various Republican officials call me up and scream at me within seconds.
Well, that actually brings me to a question I was going to ask you. It's just thinking about social media, well, multi-question. Did the party have no choice at all to do this? I mean, yesterday the forecasts were horrible, yet today I saw some sunlight. I saw blue skies.
Yeah, lovely day in Tampa.
Yeah.
I mean, what I've had explained to me ever since I tweeted my second guessing is just that I think that there's a pretty strong argument, better safe than sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the real question now is tomorrow and the next day. It sounds like the Isaac could be bearing down in New Orleans. As Ann Romney is walking up to the stage, and I think these are like really tough decisions because this whole thing is an infomercial.
Right.
And so all these decisions are not. It's not decisions about this event. They're programming decisions.
But yet, still at the same time, the party pretty much had to cede the day. They really couldn't use. I mean, this event is all about messaging. Yet they could not do any messaging.
No.
And what we saw was, we saw Newt Gingrich, we saw Ron Paul taking a lot of the headlines away from him.
Yeah, Ron Paul, he had sort of faded and sort of lost his. I think he was trying to work out some kind of compromise.
Right.
And
It
toned
seemed
himself down a little.
It seemed like things were
and then
settled down.
yesterday, just let loose, like whatever secret deal had been made between his staff and the Romney staff, he was clearly not in on.
Right.
Gave an hour and 7-minute speech, ranted about Julian Assange and Bradley Manning and all sorts of stuff that's just a million miles from the Republican platform.
Right.
And his supporters are now, are kind of up in arms.
Right,
They feel like they're really getting shut out here.
Right. And we did see a little bit of Newt Gingrich today. He had Newt U going on. He got his own headlines. And again, think about what the party could have done with a full day where they didn't have these distractions.
Newt U, it was a kind of a half-empty room with like 50 television cameras.
Yeah. How would you assess generally the party's ability, though, to manage its message through social media?
I think they're certainly very focused on it, and they're very, they're fighting these Twitter battles. I think they're thinking very hard about how to get it out more broadly. I think what did not happen today was them kind of penetrating beyond this inside conversation. I think that's very hard to do.
Yeah.
I think Mitt Romney's speech and Romney's speech are going to be opportunities to do that.
As you look through, your timeline, the things that you've seen on social media today, just talk about some of the themes that people, sort of latched on to fill the vacuum. I know Isaac certainly was one of the big topics.
Yeah. My favorite theme today was and we have it on here, and there were many more, but we had an item of 23 people who think that Hurricane Isaac is a biblical symbol about the election, and these were conservatives, these were liberals, these were people who, thought it was the proof that God hates Romney. WorldNet Daily thinks that Obama could have perhaps provoked it.
Mm-hmm. I even saw one of my colleagues was tweeting about that. Yes.
This isn't just the Twitter
the rabble.
randos.
Yeah.
No. I mean, that's the nice thing is there's no divisions here. And actually, the Times columnist Nick Kristof tweeted that global warming may be linked to hurricane intensity. Do we see a divine reprimand of Republicans for climate skepticism?
Wow.
Which I think I assume his tongue was a bit in his cheek there, but I do think think a lot of people who think that global warming is this sort of did feel that America's chickens were coming home to roost, as someone said.
The other interesting aspect of this particular part of the story was there was I guess Rush Limbaugh talked a little bit today about Isaac and about I think his complaint was somehow that the U.S. weather forecasters, the government weather forecasters, were somehow hyping the storm to let Obama cast a pall over the RNC.
I mean, I do think there's no piece of news that's not going to be interpreted by large numbers of people through these totally intensely partisan lenses. Whether it's God or the federal government, but there is something going on here that's,
Well, even tomorrow, I know the party will get a chance to work its message, to get it out. They have a full schedule, lots of speakers, but I'm pretty sure that we'll see a lot more of that intensity on social media. And listen, we're going to have you back, hopefully tomorrow, maybe even several times, and we'll talk more about it.
Look forward to it.
Okay, thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Marcus, over to you.
Thanks, Jim. Speaking of social media, we put out a Facebook question of our own today, and the question was where people's news focus is. Well, the results are in, and the answer is not here. The majority chose Tropical Storm Isaac, and Syria was second. The convention came in a distant third, and even some of the delegates we found here in Tampa are focused elsewhere. Ashley Parker and Michael Barbaro sat down earlier today to talk with how delegates have been keeping themselves busy on their unexpected day off.
So Ashley, what a strange day. I mean, everyone came here for the first day of the convention with a sense of purpose. They wanted to be part of history, and they canceled the day. So what on earth are people doing?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the convention like a big sort of production, a TV show, in a best case scenario, the delegates are kind of like extras, right? They have a part to play and they understand it. And today it was like the show was canceled, so they're all dressed up with nothing to do, nowhere to go. They don't know what their role is. So we heard about the South Carolina delegation going and singing karaoke. I spent the morning with the Utah delegation, and I don't know if this was because they had some free time or what, but one of the mayors was helping them create a Call Me Maybe video, which near and dear to my heart,
Utah?
obviously.
Hey, I'm Mike Winder, the mayor of West Valley City, Utah's second largest city, and having some fun with the delegation while we're here. I'm going through the Carly Rae Jepsen song Call Me Maybe, which you may have heard.
Utah, yep. We had Senator Orrin Hatch, I think, was saying
that he was going to appear in it.
So here's my number. No, he appeared. and Representative Jason Chaffetz said, so call me maybe. And they're all just going down the line and reading off these parts. And maybe the reason...
Just like Justin Bieber and Selena Gomez?
Pretty much. Unclear if there was a kiss where they had to separate them, but yeah, very similar otherwise.
I mean, it's weird. It's like, but this is the day when no one wants to be playing hooky. They all want to be in school. They've flown from all, and they're being told like,
it's like telling all these class presidents to play hooky.
That's right.
But speaking of hooky, you actually went to class today.
I did. I went back to school. I went to Newt University, which is, kind of the consolation prize and face-saving, proposition for Newt Gingrich after more or less being sidelined in this whole convention. So he had his first lecture today at the Hyatt Hotel in Tampa, and it was a weird thing. I mean, I think if he was expecting this to be a big comeback moment for him in the convention, it was pretty disappointing.
I mean, is it like getting a PhD, a master's, a bachelor's, a GED?
It's a little bit more like, it felt a little bit more like going to one of those Trump real estate schools.
We should keep in mind that all conventions are kind of disastrous in their own way, right? I mean, Barack Obama, who's now our president, in 2000, less than a decade before he was elected, he came to the Democratic convention and his credit card was denied at the Hertz rental car place. He didn't think he'd be able to get tickets to the main show. So even the people in the best position, it ends up being a little tragic.
One of my favorite observations about these conventions is how hierarchical they are. It's funny that, obviously Barack Obama is now at the top of that hierarchy. I remember flying down here 24 hours ago, and from the very beginning, there was just such a strong hierarchy on that plane. Matt Lauer got on first class, was escorted through the security line.
Right.
I was in the very, very last.
I was too. I was on the bathroom of my JetBlue flight
and
as
in
well.
between were all sorts of levels of importance, and that was a microcosm for this whole event. There are certain people have passes, they can get certain places. Other people are, like Newt Gingrich, are very much kind of locked outside looking in.
Right. And other people just wait by the bathroom trying to interview the Romney people when they come back.
And I think all of this normal problems have been magnified by the fact that no one knows quite what to do today, and they're spending their day in whatever way they can. And the whole event has a real feel of disorganization at the moment.
Sure does.
Not exactly what I think the Romney people want, by the way.
Right. And speaking of the hierarchy, when I went to Omelets with Orrin this morning, and the Utah delegation, obviously because Romney's something of a native son there, he has a ton of connections, and he helped save those Olympics. They were sort of crowing about their good seating placement. I think they were sort of in the middle, only behind one or two delegations, and somebody kind of cheered, "We get to hang with the tough guys this year." So
who are the tough guys?
I don't know if it was like Wisconsin maybe, or
the seating
arrangements
pretty good, hugely important, and New Jersey also crowing this year because they believe that Chris Christie, given his prominence, has nudged them further up closer to the stage than they were in the past. I went to a Chris Christie event a night or two ago where he took sole self-congratulatory credit for
where?
Yeah, the message of Chris Christie throughout this convention is, "You're welcome. I've done it for you."
Thank you, Governor.
You're welcome.
With the lack of proceedings, delegates have had plenty of time to explore the surrounding area. What they're finding is Hillsborough County, which is a swing county and a swing state. Since 1960, the county has picked the presidential winner every time except once. Video journalist Eric Olson spent time exploring this electoral battleground.
Hillsborough is the best predictor of how the state of Florida is going to vote. And as the state of Florida votes, so goes the nation.
Hillsborough County stretches across some 1,200 miles of central Florida and includes the city of Tampa, the county seat. Along with neighboring Pinellas County, Hillsborough and its population of 1.2 million residents are said to be a bellwether for the coming election.
It has every slice of the electorate that anybody would ever want to look at. It has age diversity. It has almost equal percentages of African Americans and Hispanics. It also has the three geographies that we look at: rural, urban, and suburban.
Companies from all over the world come here to test products using focus groups comprised of residents throughout the region.
What it allows companies to do is to decide whether or not they should go to market with a particular product or whether or not they should just keep it in the R&D phase.
To better understand the wide-ranging diversity of the region, Schwartz's Lauren Drake led us on a driving tour of the county.
You're going to see some Hispanic neighborhoods, you're going to see some African American neighborhoods, you're going to see white affluent suburban neighborhoods, and a representation of the melting pot that is the U.S.
This tour began in historic Ybor City, once the heart of Tampa's lively Cuban enclave. Unlike Miami's Cuban population, however, which traditionally has voted conservative, Tampa's Cubans skew more liberal, although certain topics are still of great interest to both groups.
Lifting the embargo is only going to make Fidel or his brother richer. That's all it's going to do. It's not going to help the average person. It's just going to make the powers that are there richer and richer, and for no good reason.
I don't think the old guard of Cuba, Fidel and his brother, are very enamored about lifting the embargo. They like the embargo. It has made them rich, it has made them powerful, it has kept them in power. I feel the embargo is what has kept Castro in power.
Next stop is the University of Tampa, which is located near the heart of downtown.
Tampa is also a bit of a college town. Behind me here is the University of Tampa, which is home to 7,000 students. This is a private institution. It's been around since 1931, which is home to a very diverse academic population. In 2008, we all know that Obama's campaign did a terrific job, especially here in Hillsborough County, of getting the first-time voter, the young voter, the minority voter, the independent voters to turn out in droves for that election, which ultimately helped him win Hillsborough County.
Near downtown and the university is the community of Davis Island, which votes Republican.
Okay, so we're here in Davis Islands. We got about 5,000 residents here, mostly affluent, as you can see by the homes here. Very upscale neighborhood. Some famous residents here that actually live here. Derek Jeter of the New York Yankees built a house here back in 2011.
Just a few miles away is the home to much of Tampa's large democratically voting Hispanic population.
This is an ethnic enclave where you'll find Cubans, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Mexicans, and other Spanish-speaking people, mostly from the Caribbean islands.
Los republicanos pasaron 8 años en la presidencia con Bush y la economía se fue a pique. Todos los presidentes republicanos han hecho guerra. No creo que los republicanos vayan a resolver el problema de la economía.
Finally, we head out of Tampa along the I-4 to Plant City.
Around me is a very rural population of about 31,000 people. They're conservative, largely a Republican voting bloc, but also very much a part of Hillsborough County.
I am a teacher, but I'm also a registered Republican, which is a bit of an anomaly. But I'm pretty sure I'll be voting for Romney.
And what is it about Romney that appeals to you?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I vote morally as a Christian, so I have to vote for someone who does not believe in abortion.
Mr. Romney right now.
Generally, I vote Republican, but I'm not sure how I feel about Romney.
I don't vote. I ain't never voted a day in my life. As far as I'm concerned, it don't matter who's president. I don't think it's going to change my life one way or another. If I'm going to change it, I'm going to have to do it myself.
Rick Burke joins me now from the Media Center, and he's got reporter Jeremy Peters with him. Take it away, Rick.
It's interesting how much investment a lot of the news organizations have put into this convention, and the New York Times were giving out water bottles, and my favorite T-shirt is this PBS one that says "Getting Wonky on You" since 1973. Now, all this effort, all this investment, are reporters and editors regretting it all coming here given the storm and given that the nation's attention isn't really focused on here?
No, I don't think so at all, because after tonight you're going to have a full-blown convention. So while today may have seemed like a little bit of a day off, for us, remember there was another huge story to cover that was barreling toward New Orleans.
Now, all three of the major news anchors are here, right? But were any of them thinking of going to New Orleans?
There's been some discussion about what if. What if the storm gets considerably worse and looks like it's going to hit New Orleans head on and cause significant damage? Those plans are, for the most part, premature. All the anchors held their newscasts here in Tampa tonight, and for now they plan to stay here.
Is there something sort of surreal about this whole situation? Here we are doing a nighttime video show when there's no convention to talk about at the moment. We even considered whether we even want to do this tonight, but everyone's kind of gone on and done their shows anyway, without having the backdrop of speakers at the podium.
Right. Well, for everybody who says that they don't, that conventions have no news and produce no news, maybe they're right, because we seem to make it up just fine without them.
Right. Now, for the journalists here, are they? Do you see people being torn about being here, or do you think everyone's still pretty much excited in the moment and ready to cover this convention?
No, I think so. I think people are definitely still very invested in covering this. I think that the trick is going to come tomorrow when we know where the storm appears to be headed. Because if the Republicans are forced to cancel another day of events, that's when the Diane Sawyers start packing their bags and heading to New Orleans, and this starts to really suffer as a news event.
You have a piece in Tomorrow about this very issue, and the one line I particularly liked was how we don't put Judy Woodruff on a beach, and that was from the PBS, one of the PBS spokesmen. So there are a lot of people here who are diehard convention political reporters who could care less about weather stories. But we have to be cognizant, as you said, that this is a very serious storm, and it could be that everything switches to the storm if it is as bad as it could be.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what are we looking at? Are we looking at a convention that starts on Friday and goes into the weekend? None of the networks are prepared to cover anything like that because they're all packing their bags on Friday morning and going to Charlotte.
Right.
That could be something completely unforeseen.
Right. Well, that's what's exciting about this. We have no idea what tomorrow will bring. So
Exactly.
Thanks, Jeremy. We'll keep in touch. I sat down earlier with Jill Abramson to talk about the role of money here at this convention. Here's our conversation. Jill Abramson, executive editor of the New York Times. A lot of what you and I do at these conventions is troll around and look for people to watch and trying to see what's going on behind the scenes. We went for lunch today to the Marriott because it's the Romney Hotel. We figured all the big donors would be there, but what did we come up with?
Not much visible action. The convention planners, and I think the Romney campaign itself, wants to keep the role of donors hidden away. It's not something that anyone will see at home on their TV screens, but in the lobby of the Marriott, if either of us stationed ourselves there, we could get a view of this other secret convention, which is a very busy and bustling one where checks are being written and donors are trying to get some access to the political players.
Now, you and I have covered conventions for a long time. We covered campaign finance in the late 80s, and this feels different in terms of the role of money in politics.
Well, now it's pretty much, a billionaire's playground where, because of court decisions and other factors, unlimited campaign donations are now allowed to be raised and spent as long as the candidate, in this case Mitt Romney, isn't directly calling the shots about where the super PACs spend their money.
We write in the New York Times a lot about Adelson and the super PAC kingpins. Are they the rock stars now of American politics in some ways?
Some people who have written about them call them the sugar daddies of this election. I think that is probably accurate, that you have a group of extremely wealthy individuals giving more money individually than we've seen.
I mean, we're here at the Republican convention, but we could be having the same discussion
Oh,
at the Democratic
absolutely.
convention.
And in fact, the Democrats are hoping to use their convention to motivate their big donors who so far have not given in the same at the same magnitude and with the same level of enthusiasm that the Republicans have. A lot of President Obama's biggest donors from 4 years ago are upset because he hasn't posed for photographs with them.
That was the Jane Mayer
yes, it was
article.
Jane Mayer's piece in the New Yorker, and what many donors want, is that picture with the president or the president and the first lady, which shows that they have access and that they're important friends.
Do you think Romney's any better with donors?
Well, it's hard to know because the Romney campaign has kept the press and away from most of Mitt Romney's encounters with his donors. But there are receptions galore with, wonderful hors d'oeuvres of all kinds. There are many private receptions for showing the love to donors, and unfortunately those are usually the things that are totally closed to the press. You and I, when we arrived in Tampa, was interesting. We passed by Karl Rove, who was being greeted and courted already at the baggage claim as if he was the candidate and the star of the show. And in many ways he is, because he heads American Crossroads, one of the big super PACs that will be spending lots of money on Republican races, including the presidential contest.
From putting on your hat as executive editor of the paper to your past as a campaign finance reporter, how important is this in terms of our coverage of American politics, these stories about campaign finance and the role of these big donors and moneyed people?
I think it's a really important part of our coverage, a very it's a part of the coverage where we've really distinguished ourselves this year, digging both on the Republican and Democratic side into the hidden ways that money is being given and how it's meant to influence politics.
You're looking at two grizzled veterans of New York Times political reporting. I'm here with Adam Nagurney, who's our LA bureau chief, who came in to cover the conventions. And he was our national political correspondent. I was in that role before you were. How did we end up being so old? How did this happen?
Time passes.
But the reality is you wanted to be here. You want to leave LA and be here to cover this convention. Right. Why?
I love politics. I've always loved covering politics. I always wanted to cover politics for the New York Times. I did it for a long time. I took a break to become LA bureau chief, but my feeling was that if I had something to contribute to this convention, I would come and do it. So.
And now all these young people are here. It's like, what happened? But anyway, what was your first convention, Adam?
I think it was 1980, Democrats in New York. I was like my first newspaper job, and I remember watching Ted Kennedy giving a speech and just being electrified by it. It was just really
I
cool.
was at that same convention, though. I have to say, I was in college then, but I was at that convention, and I remember standing outside the CBS box and waiting for Walter Cronkite to sign my pass. It was really exciting for me at the time.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
But is the excitement still here for you? And it's particularly odd in this situation here where there's really no convention tonight.
Right.
Is the excitement still there?
It's a lot different. And again, I want to say it's early to sort of judge things. This is the first night of before night thing.
And it really isn't the first night.
There's nothing going on, right? So
right.
It's like you look around for people or delegates or speeches, and there's just nothing. And you don't also get a sense of the party or the candidates who are trying to fill in this gap with some other events. You get a sense of lots of reporters running around trying to find a story. There's no real energy or no really sort of direction of what's going on. But again, presumably that will begin changing tomorrow when the speeches begin.
Right now, as a veteran of these events, what's your inside advice on what our viewers should look for as the week unfolds?
Yeah, I mean, what I would watch out for is keep in mind, if you're watching the network, you're only going to see 1 hour a night. If you want to see more, watch, I guess CNN or MS, or I guess we're doing some of it. Some of the stuff's obvious. You want to watch the candidate, Romney. You want to watch Ryan. You want to watch Ann. Romney, you want to watch Christie give the keynote. What I want to watch is what the candidates are, not what the candidates are saying, but what are the surrogates saying? How much are they going after Obama? What are they going after him on? Will the campaign will this kind of convention have any kind of negative tint at all? Which is something that's always either a risk or an intention of a campaign. I don't know if that's their plan at all. And the other thing is, over the years, Republicans at conventions have had to sort of balance out how much they want to talk about social issues, because I think this is fair to say that most of the delegates here are, probably against abortion rights, against a lot of forms of gay rights, and for some sort of tough measure on immigration. And those are all issues that are becoming a little bit more, I think, problematic to run in a general election campaign. And both of us can remember covering campaigns when they were probably conventions where they were probably stressed a little bit too much. So one thing I'm going to watch out for is how much they're sort of talking about it. And then in the Romney speech, they've sort of laid out what they wanted to do, which is sort of present himself as a more accessible person and not as detached, to sort of fill in the gaps. And that's what happens at conventions a lot.
Now, you had a piece on Front and Center on our website today about the state of the Republican Party right now. You talked to Dan Quayle and many other leading Republicans over the years. What surprised you the most about what you found out in your reporting from that story?
Two things.
You only have time for one thing.
1.5. I guess what I was sort of surprised about was the extent that a lot of them were concerned that the party was being taken over by people who were so I was squeezing it too, stressing social issues, which they think limits the party's appeal to independent voters, and B, by Tea Party people who do not sort of share the attitude of compromise to get things done that has been part of the sort of traditional Republican establishment.
And final question before we go is, for those of us here, is it better to go to the actual floor of the convention or watching it on TV?
If you are a journalist and you want to understand how a speech is coming across, you want to watch it on TV, because people are not watching it inside the hall.
Right.
If you go over as a journalist over there to watch it, that's totally cool, but it's tourism. You're not going to really learn
That's what I always found.
Yeah.
So if you're here,
you
really don't want to go to the hall.
No, I keep you, and it's irrational. You tell people that, they're like, oh, they fly you all the way to Tampa or wherever.
Right.
You don't even go watch the speech. No. Same with debates. You want to watch it the way everyone else is watching
Right.
it. It's a lot different. It's a lot different inside the hall than it is in person. Than it is on television. It just always is.
Great. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Rick.
Now, back to you, Marcus.
Clearly, with age comes wisdom. Thanks a lot, Rick. Appreciate it.
That's not very nice,
It's true. It's true. I'm being honest, man. As we saw from last night's big rally, Ron Paul is proving his enduring appeal to some Republican voters here in Tampa. His supporters have come from all over the country to make sure his message is heard.
Today, we're experiencing a gorgeous day at the Iowa State Fair. It's a Saturday, so it's extremely busy today. There'll be well over 100,000 people here today.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
The fair has always been very much involved in presidential politics. But what not everybody recognizes is that Iowa is also a battleground state. It's very much a toss-up state. So as soon as we get through the big straw poll up in Ames, and then we have the caucuses, it's not long and the candidates are finding their way back here, because Iowa is a very important state to anybody looking to become the president. My name's David Fisher. Most recently, I was co-chairman of Ron Paul's 2012 presidential campaign. There's a transition here while the party's under new leadership, but we're really looking forward to going down to Tampa. Our delegation from Iowa has a lot of people who were supporters of Ron Paul back on caucus night. Lexi and James are both good friends of mine. People come from different backgrounds entirely. James is a homeschool dad like myself.
Hey, what's up? Can you do it?
He's been involved in the party. He got real involved when Ron Paul ran, and he ran for the Iowa Senate, in fact.
We're a pretty independent breed in Iowa, and kind of like to take care of not only ourselves but our communities and those sorts of things. And so there's an element of independence that I want to be able to maintain and keep.
Nice. Now my friend Lexi, heck, I think she was a registered Democrat until just a few years ago.
People have the misconception that the entire movement is about Ron Paul. And I always like to say that it's not necessarily about Ron Paul the man so much as it is about the standard to which that man rises.
We elected 25 people at our state convention to go down there as full delegates. 21 of them were people supporting Ron Paul.
We turned our people out at the right places, at the right time.
I was put on the at-large slate for Iowa. The biggest impact you can have as a delegate is obviously with numbers. So the people that are in the movement that we're in, the Liberty Movement, trying to push forth, we've obviously been shooting for a higher delegate number. And because that's how you make waves. One individual can't change the world. It's got to be a group of individuals with an idea.
And I'm just thrilled, as a longtime Republican, I'm just delighted to have her going as a full delegate down there to Tampa to show the rest of the world, to show Obama and the Democrats, you don't have all the young people.
Being a delegate, you can get on platform committees and rules committees and have an impact that way. And even if we are still a minority, even in those committees, people will still hear our ideas.
Really would like to see that these ideas are recognized and respected at a national level.
A lot of it comes down quite simply to individual liberty, the Constitution, sound money, free markets, a foreign policy that isn't just insane. There's a lot of appeal with a lot of those issues to a whole lot of people that consider themselves conservative.
3, 2, 1, wrestle.
Our main goal, obviously, in Tampa would be to get Ron Paul nominated.
I really think it'd be smart politics for the Romney campaign and the RNC to invite Dr. Paul to come and have the opportunity to speak. I think that the base of support for Ron Paul is unique and something that Governor Romney needs to help him win, something that the GOP needs in the party. We hope to really be calling the GOP back to its limited government roots. Those are the principles that make us Republicans, and I think that those principles can appeal broadly to a lot of Republicans if they're delivered in the right way.
Rosie Gray now, a BuzzFeed reporter, joins me with some details. What do we expect from the policers who are here, both those who have been seated and some who have not yet been seated?
Well, there's two issues that they're worried about. One is credentials, and the other is the rules change that the Romney backers pushed through last week that would sort of weaken the power of state conventions and give the candidate the power to disavow delegates. And so with the credentials, my colleague Zeke Miller and I actually had a story today that the Paulistas in Maine are going to try to cause a floor fight tomorrow to get the whole convention to vote to get their unseated delegates back in. And they need the support of 6 other states, and they think that they have it.
2 questions. Number one, why were not all those Paul delegates from Maine seated? Why aren't they all here? Why aren't they all going to be here anyway? And then secondly, can they pull this off?
Well, they didn't make it past the Committee on Credentials, so they didn't get seated. Whether they can pull this off, like a lot of establishment types don't think that they can. They think that they have the support of Texas, Louisiana, Nevada, Iowa, and a couple other states. And if they have 6 states, they could force a lengthy roll call vote that the Romney campaign doesn't want.
And in the end, does it really change what happens on the floor? Does it present kind of a problem for the Romney campaign just in their messaging, or what? How great really is the damage?
That's what the Romney campaign is worried about. They're worried about sort of an embarrassing
I don't know what to expect, but because I don't know exactly how they're going to come down on that equation. You've raised the central question, which is we've had an election up until now that on both sides has seemed to be more about the base than the middle. And over these next few days, are we going to see a lot of Obama bashing that riles up the base, or are we going to see something more tempered and less negative, which is what traditionally appeals to swing voters? I think that's maybe the central question of this convention in the next few days, and I'm really interested to see what happens.
And you think that the Romney-Ryan ticket has a message either in substance or in style that can appeal to that center of the electorate?
I think there are enough people in the center of the electorate who are apprehensive about the direction of the country that if they can be convinced that these guys deserve a chance, and if they can become convinced there's nothing scary about them, they might be, depending on where the economic numbers are, persuadable.
And that depends on the reaction to
that depends on a lot of externals that have nothing to do with what happens here or with what happens in Obama's campaign, but are sort of, numbers and charts in Europe and that sort of thing.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles.
We're back in the skybox here in Tampa, and Jeff Zelny is back to talk to us about the day ahead. So, Jeff, tomorrow, for real, it's getting underway. What does that mean? What's going to happen?
It is. And the first thing that's going to happen is the roll call vote. The whole reason we're here, after all, is to formally nominate Mitt Romney as the Republican presidential candidate. So there has to be a bit of formality. There'll be a roll call proceeding, state by state by state. They will sort of go through this. The reason they're doing that tomorrow in earnest is in case this storm gets worse, in case it happens to hit landfall in New Orleans, which they are predicting as all three paths are right now. The Republican National Committee wants to get the real business here out of the way. So Mitt Romney can be nominated in case they would have to change the schedule as the week goes ahead.
So even if Isaac does not actually hit us here in Tampa, that doesn't matter at this point. It can still affect this convention and this Republican nominee.
No question, because of the images that could be coming out from somewhere else. But the speakers tomorrow night are key to watch. Ann Romney, first and foremost, will be
the humanizer,
tasked with humanizing her husband, Mitt Romney. She'll talk about their family. A slickly produced, a carefully produced video will be a package. So she's the humanizer. The hammer comes later. That's Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey. He's the keynote speaker.
He's been the Beast. I won't say
something like that. Who's who? No, he's been. His time has been encroached on a little bit by Ann Romney. She'll likely be the headliner now. She was initially supposed to be Monday night. Now they're both on Tuesday night. But
and this
both
is the
of
problem
those speakers
with that.
will be a
you had a
bookend.
4-day convention squeezed into 3. This is the problem. Your message that was so carefully coordinated, the one thing that these conventions are good for is getting out a candidate's message. That is obliterated now.
It is, and campaign officials are still worried about this split-screen image. If Ann Romney happens to be giving her speech at the same time that the storm is happening, it is not a clean introduction as they were hoping. Even once you are finished with the campaign in the White House, things don't always sort of go as planning. So one Romney advisor told me today, he said, this is a good dry run for us to see how we adapt to things, how we roll with things, and it could be.
Good lesson learned. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, Jeff.
Marcus.
Before we go, illustrator Christoph Niemann is covering the conventions as only he can. Here's his take on some of the tweeting going on so far. That's all for today. We'll be back tomorrow with lots more programming as the convention really gets underway. I'm Marcus Mabry. Thanks for watching the New York Times.